Welcome to Lesson 9. This is the final installment in our Crazy Patch Block of the Month program, and we will be discussing the different ways in which to embellish your blocks. In your kit, you received the pattern and fabrics necessary to construct the number 9 blocks, as well as the pattern for the 5th and final border block. Use the instructions included in your packet to complete the necessary pieces. Also included in your kit are an assortment of beads for embellishing your work, and the cotton velvet that's to be used in your sashing. You will also need a walking foot for your sewing machine if you have one, and you may want to use a small embroidery hoop for your hand beading. Locate the items that were included in previous shipments, such as your lace embellishments, any of the half or full fans that you may have constructed, any additional floss you have left over, and you're also going to need an assortment of decorative threads to do your machine stitching. Step 1 in finishing your blocks is to join them together into groups of 4 as you would a normal 4-patch block. The positioning of the blocks within the 4-patch is totally random. Arrange your blocks in a total of 9 4-patch blocks having a pleasing color arrangement. If when you're arranging your blocks you find that you have a color problem, for example, I felt that this yellow piece was too bright within this unit, so I've inserted a quarter fan block within the seam lines to help hide or disguise the offending piece. Once your 4-patch blocks are assembled, I suggest that you layer them on a piece of flannel. This flannel will act as a stabilizer for your decorative stitches, whether they're done by hand or machine. The amount of embellishing on your block is entirely up to you. I prefer to do all of the thread work on the blocks while they are in the 4-patch form. This allows me to run my stitches to the outside edge, where the ends of the stitches will be trapped in the seam allowance, and there will be less tying off to do. It also makes working under the needle of my sewing machine much easier for manipulating the blocks. I suggest that you select one color thread and use it on all of the blocks with the same stitch before moving on to the next color. This will allow you to balance the embellishing on your blocks so that all of them are embellished at an equal rate, rather than one which is heavily done and another which may be lacking. The beads or other hard embellishments should not really be added until the blocks have been assembled into the final quilt top. Adding beads or other hard embellishments in the 4-patch stage could be dangerous if they're too close to your outside seam line. Hitting a hard object with your sewing machine needle when assembling the blocks can cause the needle to break or possibly damage your sewing machine. If you would like to add beads at this stage, keep them well inside the seam lines. Add any additional embellishments that would be along the outside edge once the blocks have been assembled. The actual beading process is really quite simple. You may find that securing your work in a small embroidery hoop is very useful, as you will be traveling across the back of your work from bead to bead, and this will help keep it spaced appropriately. You will want to use a regular cotton thread in a color that coordinates with your bead, and a longer needle, one that you can hold on to and scoop the bead up at the same time. Begin your beading work using a quilter's knot, a round knot at the very end of your thread. The easiest way to tie this knot is to take your thread and your needle and cross them and pinch them between your fingers. Grab the body of the thread and wrap it around your needle several times. Hold on to all of those wraps as you pull your needle through. Pull the thread all the way to the bottom and you will have formed a round knot at the bottom of your thread. This type of knot will not pull through from the back of your work. I still suggest that you begin on the back of your work with a small stitch and then a little back stitch knot to secure your bead in place. I like to allow the fabric print itself to determine my beading technique. You can bead a lot, as I've done here, by adding a bead to every design element in the fabric print, or you could choose to do less beads by only adding a simple bead in the center of each element. A fabric such as this is perfect for beading. Heavily beaded could add a bead to every space around the outside circle, or a very light beading technique could simply add one to the center of every flower. For a slightly heavier beading technique, try adding one bead to each of the 4 pieces, in addition to the bead in the center. Many of the fabrics included in your kit will allow you to guide your beading technique. In areas where your ribbons have been attached, if you can stick your finger under the ribbon, it's a good idea to tack it down. In this case, I've used a cluster of 3 individual beads on each one of the ribbons. For areas such as the pleating technique, what I've done is before I bead, I've taken my steam iron and actually pressed the pleat into position, bent it back so that I can now use a marking guide and put a cluster of beads to hold each of them in place so that my pleats add dimension to my work, in the same way that I've done here.